I was 79 years old the morning I realized my grandson, Evan, had taken exactly $42,800 from me. Not a round number. No, it was the kind of number you only see when someone's been siphoning it bit by bit, hoping an old man wouldn't notice. And the worst part, he did it with a smile on his face, the same smile he had when he was a boy sitting on my knee, begging me to let him steer my old Ford truck around the gravel lot behind our house in Toledo, Ohio. You're probably thinking, how does a man my age miss that much money disappearing? Well, let me tell you something. Getting old doesn't make you stupid. It just makes people assume you are. It was a Tuesday morning, August 14th, 2022, around 9:30 a.m. I remember because the sun was coming in sharp through the kitchen blinds, lighting up that stack of envelopes I kept ignoring on the table. Medicare statements, a letter from the county about property taxes, and then the one from First Federal Savings Bank, thicker than usual. The minute I tore it open, I felt my stomach drop. Withdrawals, transfers, online access changes. All tied to an account only one person, besides me, had the password to. Evan, I whispered. My voice sounded like someone else's, thin, hollow. My coffee went cold while I stared at the statement. Pages of them. The amounts weren't huge individually. $600 here, $1,200 there, a couple of $3,500 transfers that hit like a gut punch. The paper shook in my hands, and I had to steady myself on the chair. That's when the front door opened. "Grandpa, you home?" His voice, God, hearing it then made my chest tighten. I folded the papers before he came in, slid them under the Toledo Mud Hens coaster on the table. I don't know why, maybe shame, maybe disbelief. Maybe I wasn't ready to admit it yet. Evan walked in like he owned the place. Ball cap, expensive sneakers, that faint smell of weed he thought I didn't recognize. He kissed my cheek. "You eat yet? I brought you a breakfast sandwich." He'd never brought me breakfast in his life. "Sit down," I told him. My voice came out steady, too steady. "We gotta talk." He sat across from me, drumming his fingers, nervous. I noticed that right away. He looked at the coaster, then at me. "What's up, Grandpa?" I didn't pull out the papers, not yet. "You been in my bank account." The room went dead quiet, except for the old fridge humming behind me. He blinked twice, then he laughed a little. "What? No, you probably clicked something on accident again. Remember last month when?" "Don't," I said. "Don't talk to me like I'm losing it." His face changed then, not fear, not guilt, something colder, a calculation. And I knew. I knew before he even opened his mouth. "Grandpa, maybe you're getting confused. It happens. We should probably talk about." I slammed my hand on the table, so hard the silverware rattled. "Cut the crap, Evan. $42,800. Tell me why you took it." He froze just for a second. Then he stood up fast, grabbing his hat. "I don't have to sit here and get accused of things. You need help, Grandpa, real help." And just like that, he walked out. I listened to his car peel out of the driveway, leaving me with nothing but a stack of papers and a heart that felt like it was cracking under its own weight. For a long minute, I just sat there, staring at the sunlight shifting across the table. I kept hearing the same words echo in my head. "Maybe you're getting confused. It happens." That's what broke me, not the money. The way he used my age as a weapon. I wish I could tell you I cried then. I didn't. I didn't have the luxury. Because right there, in that quiet kitchen with the buzzing fridge and the cold coffee and the blinds casting lines across my shaking hands, something in me hardened. I wasn't going to let him win. Not my grandson. Not with my money. Not with my dignity. You think a man my age is weak. Son, weakness is believing there's nothing left to fight for. I had $42,800 reasons to fight. And I wasn't done, not by a long shot. Before everything went sideways with Evan, my life was steady in that quiet, predictable way a man in his late 70s gets used to. I've been a widower for almost 9 years by then. My Helen passed in the fall of 2013, pancreatic cancer. Quick and cruel. Some losses cling to you differently, like they sit behind your ribs instead of in your mind. Her laugh still caught me off guard sometimes, the way you think you hear someone calling your name in a grocery store aisle. After she died, I settled into a routine in our little house on Maple Ridge Drive in Toledo, the one we bought back in '89 when interest rates were still high and money felt more solid somehow. I kept the place clean enough, dusty in the corners, sure, but lived in. My days were simple. Morning coffee, Toledo Blade crossword, a slow walk around the block if my knees allowed, and then tinkering in the garage with that old '94 Ford F-150 I refused to sell. I wasn't lonely, not exactly, just quieter than before. Evan started coming around more often after Helen passed. At first, it felt like love. He was 20 then, skinny kid, droopy hair, always wearing those hoodies with the sleeves pushed up. He'd flop onto my couch like he owned the place. "Grandpa, you got any snacks?" "Check the pantry," I'd tell him, pretending to be annoyed. He'd return with a bag of pretzels and 2 Cokes. "I brought you one," he'd say. "Don't say I never give you anything." Back then he made me laugh. He really did. He was a good kid once, or good enough that I let myself believe it. He worked part-time at a car wash, talked big about saving up for community college, bought me a new hammer one Christmas. It was cheap, aluminum, the kind that bends if you hit a nail too hard, but still, it meant something to me. And when he asked, timid-like, if I could help him learn about money, I felt proud. I'd worked 42 years at the Jeep plant on Stickney Avenue, saved every damn penny I could, did the 401k, the VA benefits, all the boring stuff most young folks ignore. To have him come to me, well, it made me feel useful. That was the first time I gave him access to anything. A simple login to check my bank balance so he could learn how online banking works. Harmless, I thought. My daughter, his mother, Debbie, warned me once, maybe a year before everything broke. "You give that boy too much trust, Dad," she said, standing in my kitchen with her purse still on her shoulder. "He's not a bad kid, but he's impulsive." "Means he's young," I said. "No," she corrected gently, "means he's careless." I waved her off. She had her own troubles, divorce, money issues, always scrambling. I didn't want to add tension between them, and I was proud that Evan still came around. Kids drift, families drift, but he stayed, so I held on. There were little signs, of course. Moments I should have seen for what they were. Like the day he asked, "Grandpa, what's your password again?" The banking one. I'd given it to him months before. "Why do you need it?" I asked. "Oh, just want to check something about those interest rates you mentioned." I told him, didn't think twice. Or the time he came over with a brand new iPhone. "Got a deal," he said. "Friend owed me money." But something about the way he avoided eye contact should have told me it wasn't the whole truth. Still, I let it slide. The thing is, when you get to be my age, you cling to the people who stay in your orbit. Doesn't matter if they're perfect. Doesn't matter if they're complicated. You cling because you don't know how many years you've got left to share with them. And Evan stayed. He stayed through holidays, popping in to help me hang lights even when the wind cut sharp against our faces. He stayed through doctor visits, waiting in the car scrolling his phone while I dealt with blood work and prescriptions. He stayed through Veterans Day breakfasts at the VFW, nodding politely while old men told the same stories again and again. He made me feel like family still meant something. So when he hugged me that one Sunday after church in 2021 when he said, "Grandpa, I'll always take care of you," I believed him. Those words, God help me, I believed them like gospel. Maybe that's what stings most now, not the money, not the betrayal. It's the knowledge that I handed him the keys he used to rob me. Smiling the whole time. Looking back, I can trace every crack that formed before the break. Every moment I ignored. Every uneasy feeling I swallowed to keep the peace. But the truth, nothing, prepared me for the morning I saw those numbers on my bank statement. Nothing prepared me for the realization that the kid who used to fall asleep on my couch during baseball games had drained my future in near silence. and nothing prepared me for how far I'd go to make him face what he'd done. Because by then, you see, the cracks were already spreading, and the shattering moment was closer than I understood. You ever look back on something and realize the warning signs were screaming at you long before you heard them? That's how it was with Evan. The first real crack showed up almost a year before I saw the bank statement. So small I brushed it off, like the kind of creak an old house makes that you convince yourself is just settling. It was a chilly morning in October 2021, the kind where the air bites a little when you step outside. I'd driven my old F-150 down to Kroger on Monroe Street, stocking up on canned soup and those instant mashed potatoes I pretend I don't like but keep buying. When I got home, there was a message blinking on my answering machine. "Mr. Weller, this is Sarah from First Federal Savings Bank. We'd like to verify some recent online activity on your checking account. Please give us a call at your earliest convenience." My stomach fluttered a little, not fear, just that uneasy feeling you can't name right away. I called them back while the groceries sat half-bagged on the counter. "Yes, Mr. Weller," the woman said after pulling up my information. "We noticed a password reset and a device login from a location we don't have on file. Do you recognize this activity?" I remember rubbing my forehead. "I haven't touched anything. I don't even know how to reset a password on your website." She hesitated before saying, "Do you have anyone else with access?" I did. "Evan?" "Oh, that must be my grandson," I said, feeling a strange mix of pride and defensiveness rise in me. "He helps me with the online parts." "Okay, sir," she said, clearly relieved to have an explanation. "We just wanted to be sure. Would you like us to verify the device?" "No need," I said. "Everything's fine." But everything wasn't fine. I just didn't want the alternative to be true. Later that afternoon, I asked Evan about it while he was sitting at my kitchen table, scrolling through his phone like always. "You reset my bank login?" I asked, keeping my voice light. He glanced up barely. "Oh, yeah, you told me the password was giving you trouble last week, remember?" I did. Maybe I had. My memory wasn't what it used to be, especially when stress flared up, but I didn't think I had said that. "Yeah," he said, tapping on the screen again. "It was no big deal. I just fixed it for you. You're good." He spoke so casually, like it was nothing. Like I should be grateful. And I was. I was grateful. "That's what gets me." "That's kind of you, Evan," I said. "I appreciate the help." He smiled without looking at me. "Always, Grandpa, you know I got you." But something in his tone didn't sit right. It was practiced, too smooth. That night, lying in bed with the house creaking in the cold, I replayed the conversation. Did I really forget talking about the password? I'd forgotten little things before, an appointment date, the name of the neighbor's new dog, but a whole conversation. It nagged at me enough that I found myself awake at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it tick as it made its slow, uneven rotation. That was the first crack. The second one came in January, right after New Year's. Evan came by with a stack of envelopes, my mail he'd picked up while I was at my doctor's appointment. "Bank stuff," he said, waving it. "Looks boring." "Let me see." I reached out, but he pulled it back a hair too quickly before handing it over. A tiny moment, a fraction of a second, but real. I noticed it. "What's the rush?" I asked. "No rush." He forced a laugh. "Just cold as hell outside. Want to get back in the car before it dies on me." His car was a 2017 Honda Civic. That thing wasn't dying. Later that evening, I went through the mail he'd brought. There was something odd, 2 monthly statements, packed tight, one envelope visibly opened and resealed. Probably just the post office being sloppy, I told myself. That happens. But the glue line didn't look factory-made. It looked homemade. I held the envelope to my nose. Glue has a smell when it's been licked shut. I knew that smell from sealing Christmas cards for decades. Evan had opened it. He'd opened my bank statement. I remember whispering, "Why, Evan?" to the empty living room. My voice sounded small, too small. I didn't sleep that night either. I wish I could tell you I confronted him then. I wish I could say I trusted my instincts. But here's the truth most people won't admit. It's easier to doubt yourself than to believe someone you love is slowly betraying you. So I swallowed it. I folded up the statement and tucked it in the drawer next to Helen's prayer card and the Timex I never wore anymore. I convinced myself there was nothing wrong. But the cracks were spreading. You can only patch over so much before something gives way. And it did, on a cold morning in early March 2022, when the third crack hit me right between the eyes. That's when the shattering began. That morning, March 3rd, 2022, is burned into me the way a burned scar remembers heat. I'd been up since before sunrise because my knee was acting up again, throbbing like a busted engine piston. I figured a hot shower might loosen it. It didn't. So I put on a pot of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, rubbing my joint and staring at the line of frost on the window like it had something to say. At 7:14 a.m. the doorbell rang. No one rings your bell that early unless it's a mistake, a package, or trouble. When I opened the door, a young man in a navy jacket stood on the porch, breath puffing in the cold. First Federal Savings Bank was stitched on his chest, and he held a clipboard. "Mr. Weller," he asked. "That's me." He gave me a polite smile. "I'm Daniel Ruiz, Fraud Prevention Department. We've been trying to reach you." My stomach tightened. "Everything okay?" "Well," he shifted, boots crunching the thin ice on the porch. "There's been suspicious activity on your account again. Significant withdrawals, online transfers. We sent letters, but—" "I get my mail," I cut in. "What suspicious activity?" He hesitated. He was young, maybe 25, and I could tell he didn't want to be the one to break bad news to an old man at sunrise. "Sir, it might be easier if we go through the transactions together." I let him in. The warmth hit his glasses and fogged them. I motioned him to the kitchen table. He sat, flipping open his folder. "Mr. Weller, are you familiar with these transfers?" He slid a sheet across the table. The first line hit me like a punch. $3,500, Zelle transfer, EVAN Weller, Jan 28. My hands went numb. The next, $2,100, Venmo instant transfer, Evan W. Feb 3. Then more. $600, $1,800, $900, $3,000, $2,500. Over and over. Pages. It was like watching years of work, sacrifice, long shifts at the Jeep plant, money I'd guarded for decades, bleed away in black ink. My throat tightened. That can't be right. He tapped the bottom of the page gently. "Sir, the account was accessed with your login credentials." I stared at him. "You think I sent this?" "No, sir. I think someone who had your password did." There are moments in life when everything around you goes quiet in a way that doesn't feel natural. The fridge hum faded. The clock tick disappeared. Even my own breathing felt too loud. I suddenly remembered the envelope, resealed. The password reset. The too casual smile. The new iPhone. The suspicious glue smell. All the cracks lined up, pointing one direction. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. "Mr. Weller," Daniel added carefully, "if you believe someone you know did this, the next steps will involve documentation, potentially law enforcement. We just need your confirmation." "My grandson," I said, the words dragging out of me like gravel. He helps me with banking, but I didn't authorize this." Daniel's face softened. "I'm very sorry, sir." He walked me through the transactions one by one, but after the fourth page, I couldn't focus on the numbers anymore. My vision blurred. My chest felt tight. Helen used to warn me when I'd get stressed that I held my breath without realizing it. Daniel paused. "Would you like some water?" I nodded, couldn't speak. When he left, he put a hand gently on my forearm. "Mr. Weller, we'll help you get this sorted. You're not alone in this." But once the door closed behind him, the house felt cavernous. I sank into the kitchen chair and let the papers spill across the table. They rustled like dry leaves. The sun had risen enough to cast long shadows across the list of charges, each shadow looking like a crack running through my life. At 8:36 a.m., my phone vibrated. Evan. His name lit up the screen. For a second I thought maybe, he'd confess, apologize, say he was in trouble, that he needed help. But when I answered, his voice came through casual as ever. "Hey Grandpa, I left my jacket at your place yesterday. Mind if I swing by later?" My grip tightened on the phone. "Evan, we need to talk." A pause. "About what?" "About my bank account." Silence, then a nervous laugh. "What's going on?" "Don't play dumb with me. A man from the bank came. I know everything." The line went so quiet I could hear my own pulse thudding. Finally he spoke, voice harder than I'd ever heard. "Grandpa, maybe you're confused again. I told you we talked about moving." "We never talked about that," I snapped. My voice cracked, but it held. "I know what you did." His tone turned cold. "You're being paranoid. Maybe it's time we discuss getting you some help, real help." That word again. Help. The kind people use when they want to make you sound incompetent. The betrayal didn't hit all at once. It seeped in slow, like poison. I whispered, "How could you do this to me, Evan?" He sighed, "Look, I gotta go, we'll talk later." And he hung up. Just like that. As if $42,000 was a parking ticket. I stared at the silent phone in my hand. Something inside me broke. Not loud, not dramatic, just a soft internal snap, the kind you don't notice until you feel the emptiness afterward. That was the moment. The shattering. Not the money. Not the lie. But the realization that the boy I loved, trusted, would rather gaslight me than tell the truth. Standing there in my quiet kitchen, I felt something else rise inside me too. Resolve. A cold, steady kind I hadn't felt since my early days at the Jeep line, when we fought management for fair wages. That stubborn, blue-collar fire still lived in me somewhere. If Evan thought I was weak, if he thought I was old enough to manipulate, if he thought he could steal from me and walk away, he didn't know the man who raised his father. He didn't know the man Helen married. He didn't know the man I still was. I wasn't done. Not even close. You'd think the shattering moment would be the lowest point, that once the truth is out, the only direction left is up. But that's not how life works, not for men my age. When you're 79, every fall feels like it drops you farther than the one before. And after I confronted Evan, I didn't bounce back. I sank. The days that followed blurred together like wet ink. I moved through the house in slow motion, every step echoing more than it should have in those narrow halls. I kept expecting to hear Helen humming from the kitchen or calling me stubborn over something trivial. But the house stayed quiet in that hollow way that makes you talk to yourself just to prove you still exist. The bank froze my accounts while they investigated. That was the first hit. My debit card got declined at Kroger for a $38 grocery purchase. The cashier, a teenager with braces and a nose ring, looked at me with this kind of pity I couldn't stand. "Do you want to try another card?" she whispered, like the whole store wasn't already listening. "I have money," I said, too sharp, too defensive. "Of course, sir," she replied, which somehow made it worse. I walked out with only a loaf of bread and a carton of eggs I paid for in crumpled singles. My hands shook so bad the receipt fluttered to the floor, and I didn't have the pride left in me to pick it up. The second blow came from my doctor. "Your blood pressure's up, Frank," he said, clicking his pen against the chart. "Stress will do that at your age. You need to dial it back." Dial it back. As if I had a switch. The third blow came from someone I didn't expect, my own daughter. She showed up unannounced one cold Tuesday afternoon. I was on the recliner, staring at the muted TV. When the door swung open, she walked in with a determined look, her coat still on, her eyes scanning the living room. "Dad, we need to talk." I sat up. "About what?" She took a breath like she was bracing herself. I got a call from Evan. My stomach clenched. What did he say? He's worried about you. About me. He said you're forgetting things, getting confused, maybe mixing up conversations. He said you accused him of something extreme. I felt heat rush to my face. Extreme, Debbie, he stole. She held up a hand. Dad, just listen. He told me he's scared you're getting worse. He thinks you might need help managing your finances. I laughed short, bitter, ugly. He said that, did he? Dad, her voice softened. You gave him your password. Maybe there's a misunderstanding. Did he tell you about the $42,800 missing from my account? She blinked. What? The bank has the proof. They sent a man here. Evan took it, every damn dollar. Debbie's face twisted, first confusion, then discomfort, then that same look the Kroger cashier gave me. Dad, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. The shout tore out of me before I could stop it. She stepped back. There's no need to yell. I dropped my head into my hands. I'm not making this up, Deb. I'm not losing it. She hesitated for too long. I think we need to get you evaluated, just to be safe. Her words hit harder than any of Evan's lies. My own daughter, my baby girl, didn't believe me. A strange coldness spread through my chest. Not anger, not sadness, just a quiet realization that I was alone in this. Dad, she tried again, all I want is to make sure you're okay. I didn't look at her when I answered. You can go now. Dad, please, my voice cracked. Just go. She left reluctantly, glancing back twice like she expected me to crumble right there in the doorway. The moment the door closed, the house felt smaller, like the walls had leaned in a few inches. I sat at the kitchen table with my head down, listening to the clock tick loudly from across the room. I'd lost my savings. I'd lost my daughter's trust. And Evan. He was out there somewhere, living his life like nothing had happened. For the next 2 weeks, I barely slept. At night, I tossed in bed replaying every moment, every sign I'd ignored, every time I handed him my trust like it was bottomless. Was I slipping? Had age crept up on me without me noticing? The question gnawed at me in dark hours. One night around 3 a.m., I sat on the side of my bed, hands trembling, the red glow of the alarm clock blinking in the corner of my vision. I whispered to myself, what if he's right? What if I am confused? But then another thought pushed in. What if that's exactly what he wanted me to believe? That was the turning point. Not a loud moment, not dramatic, just a slow, stubborn ember flickering back to life. Evan wanted me doubting myself. He wanted me quiet. He wanted me pliable. And for a moment, he'd almost won. But here's something people always forget about old men. We've spent a lifetime getting back up. Somewhere between the doubt and the exhaustion, between the humiliation at Kroger and the disbelief in Debbie's eyes, I realized something simple and sharp. If I didn't fight for myself, no one else would. And that was the night, alone in that dark room, aching and tired, that I made the decision. I wasn't going to fade away. I wasn't going to surrender my life, my dignity, or my story. I was going to find someone who would listen, someone who would believe me, someone who knew how to help a man like me fight back. I just didn't expect who that someone would be. If you told me the person who'd pull me out of that spiral would be a 26-year-old night shift nurse from the VA clinic on Glendale Avenue, I would have laughed in your face. I'm a stubborn old mule by nature. I don't trust easily, and at that point I trusted nobody. Not my grandson, not my daughter, not even myself some nights. But the universe has a way of slipping the right person into your path when you're hanging by a thread. It started on a Thursday morning, March 24th, 2022, when I dragged myself into the VA for my blood pressure check. I hadn't shaved in days, and I was wearing the same flannel shirt I'd fallen asleep in the night before. I probably looked like hell warmed over. At the check-in desk, I dropped my ID card twice. The woman behind the counter smiled politely the first time, sympathetically the second. That pity again. I hated it. I took a seat, staring at the scuffed linoleum, feeling the weight of those missing $42,800 pressing on me like a cinder block on my chest. "Mr. Weller." I looked up. She stood in the doorway, short brown hair tucked behind her ears, warm brown eyes that didn't look through me the way everyone else seemed to lately. Her badge read Nurse Rosa Martínez. "Come on back," she said, her voice steady, calm. "Let's get you taken care of." Inside the exam room, she wrapped the cuff around my arm. "You okay today?" "Fine," I muttered. She raised her eyebrows. "Your pressure tells me that's not true." I didn't answer. I stared at the poster on the wall about sodium intake, anything to avoid her gaze. She softened her tone. "Mr. Weller, you look like a man with a lot on his shoulders. You want to tell me what's going on?" Something cracked in me then, not the dramatic kind of crack, but a tired, worn-out sigh of a break. "I think my grandson robbed me," I said quietly. Rosa froze, not out of shock but out of focus, like she was switching into a mode she knew all too well. "Tell me what happened," she said. And damned if I didn't. All of it, every detail, the envelopes, the withdrawals, the gaslighting, my daughter not believing me, the humiliation at Kroger, the bank freezing my account. She didn't interrupt. She didn't pity me. She didn't look at me like I was imagining things. When I finished, she placed a hand on my forearm. Not gently, not in a fragile old man way, but like someone staking a flag in solid ground. "Mr. Weller, you're not crazy, and you're not confused. You're being taken advantage of." The relief that washed over me hit so hard I had to close my eyes for a second. Her words were the first solid ground I'd felt in weeks. Then she leaned in. "You said the bank has documentation." "Yes." "And he had your password." "Yes." "And you didn't authorize the transfers." "No." "Okay," she said, nodding with purpose. "Then you have a case. You need help from someone who knows what they're doing." "I can't afford a lawyer," I said. "You might not need a private one." She pulled out a small notepad. "There's a legal aid office downtown, Lucas County Legal Services. They help seniors in financial exploitation cases, and they take them seriously." I swallowed. "You think they'll believe me?" "I believe you," she said, "and I've seen a lot." There was something in her tone, experience, maybe, or righteous anger, that made me sit up straighter. She wasn't done. "Before you go, you need to gather everything you have, every bank statement, every login notification, every voicemail, every letter, anything that shows a timeline." "Okay." "And don't confront him again, not yet." "I almost did last week," I admitted. "Good thing you didn't," she said, shaking her head. "If he feels cornered, he could try to flip this on you, or worse, wipe evidence." I felt a cold shiver run through me. "You think he'd do that?" "I think anyone who steals that much money from their grandfather is capable of more than you want to believe." That hit hard. Harder than I showed. Rosa scribbled a number on the pad and tore the page off. "This is the direct line to Margaret Chen at Legal Services," she said. "She's tough as nails and doesn't let people push seniors around. Call her today." I stared at the paper. "You're really helping me like this?" She shrugged, but her eyes were steady. "I take care of vets, Mr. Weller. That doesn't stop when your appointment ends." I felt something tighten in my throat, not grief, not anger, something else. Gratitude, maybe, something rare these days. She stood to leave, but paused at the door. "And Mr. Weller, don't let anyone convince you you're losing your mind. You're sharper than half the men who come through here." I chuckled dryly. "That's not saying much." Rosa laughed, a soft, warm sound I didn't know I needed. "Trust me, you've still got plenty of fight left." When I walked out of the VA that morning, the wind hit my face hard and cold. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel like it could knock me over. I went straight home, pulled out every drawer, every file, every envelope. I laid everything across the kitchen table: bank statements, password reset notices, call logs, the fraud officer's paperwork. It looked like a war map. And standing over it, something clicked into place. Evan had built his little trap with lies, manipulation, and stolen trust. But I had something he didn't count on. Documentation. A witness at the bank. And now someone in my corner. I picked up the phone and dialed the number Rosa gave me. "Legal services, this is Margaret," a sharp voice said. My hand tightened around the receiver. "Ms. Chen," I said, "my name is Frank Weller. I need help." "Tell me what happened." And I did. When I finished, she didn't hesitate. "Mr. Weller," she said, "what your grandson did is a crime, and I'm going to help you make this right." That was the moment the tide turned. Not with shouting, not with vengeance, but with a steady, deliberate gathering of truth and allies. It was the beginning of the setup. The calm before the storm. Margaret Chen didn't waste time, not even a second. She was one of those women who spoke like every word cost her money, sharp and efficient, the kind of person who could slice excuses right out of a man's mouth before he even formed them. When we first met at the Lucas County Legal Services office downtown, a squat brick building with flickering overhead lights and mismatched chairs, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. A sense of direction. "Sit," she said the moment I walked in, barely looking up from the stack of papers I'd handed her 2 days earlier. I sat. She tapped one page, then another. "These are good, time-stamped, consistent, verifiable." "I kept everything," I said. "Most seniors don't," she replied, finally lifting her eyes to me. "You're organized, Mr. Weller. That'll work in our favor." Someone believing in me. It hit harder than I expected. She slid a form across the desk. "This is the affidavit. You sign, I file. After that, the County Elder Abuse Task Force gets involved." "Task Force," I repeated. "Yes," she said plainly. "You're not the first grandfather someone has stolen from, but you will be one of the ones who gets justice if you follow instructions exactly." I nodded. "Tell me what to do." The setup took shape in small, deliberate steps. Step 1, go quiet. "You are not to confront your grandson," Margaret said, pointing a pen at me. "No calls, no messages, no showing up at his apartment." "I haven't talked to him since the bank came." "Good, keep it that way. Silence is leverage. If he thinks you're confused or backing down, he'll stop watching his tracks." That stung, to think he expected me to fade into the wallpaper like some helpless old man. But the sting also hardened into purpose. Step 2, play weak. This was the hardest part. "You need to let him think you've moved on," Margaret said. "Why?" "Because when people believe their victim is passive, they get bold. And bold criminals make sloppy mistakes. We need him sloppy." I didn't like it. I didn't like pretending confusion, acting slow, letting people, especially Evan, underestimate me. But I did it. I stopped calling Debbie. I kept my head down. When Evan texted once, just once, to say, "Hope you're okay," I didn't reply. He needed to think the storm had passed. Step 3, gather more than paper. That's where Rosa came in again. One afternoon she stopped by my house after her shift, still in scrubs, hair pulled back tight. She carried a thermos of something that smelled like cinnamon. "Tea de canela," she said, "helps calm nerves." I could use a gallon of that. She sat across from me, looking over the papers again. "You're missing something," she said. "What's that?" "Proof he accessed your account digitally, screenshots, login timestamps, IP addresses." "I don't know how to get any of that." "I do." She came back the next night with her laptop. I watched her fingers fly across the keys like a pianist who'd rehearsed this piece 1,000 times. "There," she said after 10 minutes, turning the screen toward me. "This is his device accessing your account from his apartment, repeatedly." I felt my jaw tighten. "You're sure?" "His IP matches his home internet provider." "How do you know that?" She grinned. "You'd be amazed what veterans tell nurses when they think we're just taking their blood pressure." That made me laugh, really laugh, for the first time in months. We printed the logs, added them to the pile. Step 4, let him talk without knowing you're listening. This step, that was Margaret's idea. "You said he comes over sometimes without notice," she said, flipping open her legal pad. "He used to," I admitted. He will again. People like him circle back when they want something. When he does, we need you ready. Ready how? She reached into her drawer and pulled out a small device, something the size of a pack of gum. A recorder. A perfectly legal one, she clarified. Ohio is a one-party consent state. If he says anything incriminating, anything showing he knew he wasn't authorized, that becomes Exhibit A. I held the little thing in my palm. It felt heavier than it should have. You think he'll slip up? I asked. He already has, she said. He just doesn't know you're paying attention now. I didn't tell her how my hands shook holding the device. Not fear, not exactly. More the weight of finally doing something, taking action. Taking back control. The first test of the setup. It happened faster than I expected. 4 days later, late afternoon, I was in the living room flipping through channels when I heard the knock. Not a polite knock, a familiar one, 3 quick taps, a pause, then 2 more. Evan. My heart thudded painfully. The recorder was in my shirt pocket, just like Margaret told me. I opened the door. He stood there with his hands shoved in his hoodie pockets, shifting from foot to foot like a kid caught somewhere between guilt and annoyance. Hey, Grandpa, he said, mind if I come in? I stepped aside without a word. He walked in, looked around like he expected something to be different. You've been quiet, he said, glancing at me. Everything okay? I gave him a tired sigh and lowered myself into the recliner. Just been worn out. Doctor says I need to take it easy. He nodded, relaxed just a notch. Good, let him believe it. I was thinking, he continued, if you want, I can help you manage your bills for a while, just until you're feeling better. My blood boiled, but I let my face stay slack, weary. That's so, I murmured. Yeah, I know you get mixed up sometimes. It's no big deal. There it was. The angle. The manipulation. The setup, his setup, assuming I just fold. I needed him to talk just a little more. How would that work? I asked softly. Oh, just the usual stuff, he said, shrugging. Online payments, checking your balances. Honestly, I kinda already do most of it. It's not a big jump. His words hit me like a smash of cold water. He was admitting it. Not fully, not explicitly. But enough. You've helped before, I asked. Sure, he said casually. You gave me your password, remember? Told me you couldn't keep track of it. There it was. The lie. The revisionist history. The gaslighting, spoken clearly into the recorder in my pocket. I nodded slowly, if you say so. He smiled, smug, relieved. And I knew I had him. Not completely. Not yet. But the trap was beginning to close. When he left, I didn't collapse the way I expected. I sat there, breathing slow, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not despair. Not confusion. Not weakness. Control. The game had shifted. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I wasn't the prey. Evan had no idea what was coming. He didn't know about Margaret. He didn't know about Rosa. He didn't know about the logs, the documents, the recorder. He thought I was fading. He thought I was confused. He thought the money was the end of it. He thought he'd already won. And that was exactly what I needed him to think. Because the execution, the real beginning of the end, was coming faster than he realized. I didn't sleep the night before the hearing, not out of fear, but out of a strange electric tension running through me. The kind a man gets before a long-awaited showdown. The wind rattled the siding on the house, and every time I closed my eyes, I pictured Evan's face the moment the truth would land. Not because I wanted to humiliate him, but because I needed him to finally see me. Not as a doddering old man. Not as a wallet on legs. But as the grandfather who raised him better than this. The hearing was set for April 18, 2022 at the Lucas County Probate Court, Room 3B, a guardianship evaluation hearing. That's what Margaret pushed for. It's not criminal court, not yet. It's where families drag old folks to be put under protection. Evan didn't file anything official, not yet, but Debbie's concerns and his not-so-subtle suggestions had put me on the county's radar. Margaret knew this. She knew the quickest way to shut down their angle was to get in front of it, loudly, legally, undeniably. "You're going to walk in with evidence," she told me the day before. "He'll walk in with a story. Let the judge sort out which one holds weight." I nodded, breathing through the ache in my chest. "He's going to lie." "Of course he will," Margaret said, "and that's why we let him." The morning of the hearing, I put on my best flannel, blue and gray, Helen's favorite, and my cleanest pair of Levi's. I shaved carefully, nicking myself twice because my hand wouldn't stop trembling. Not from age, from anticipation. Rosa picked me up in her old Honda Civic. "You don't have to drive me," I said, tugging the seatbelt into place. She smiled. "If you think I'm letting you go into that building alone, you don't know me at all." Her steady calm was the only thing that kept my stomach from tying itself in knots. When we reached downtown, the courthouse looked colder than usual. Gray stone, tall windows, a flag whipping violently in the wind above us. Inside the hallway outside room 3B, I saw them. Debbie and Evan. My daughter looked tense, arms folded, foot tapping, her face pale. Evan looked annoyed to even be there. His hoodie was too casual for court, and he kept checking his phone like he had better things to do. When Debbie spotted me, she stood straighter. "Dad," she said softly, "you came." "Of course I came," I replied. She opened her mouth to say something else, but Evan stepped in front of her. "Grandpa," he said, voice low and tight, "let's not make this a big thing." I stared at him, studying the boy I used to fall asleep in a recliner with when he was 4. The freckles were still there, the soft corners of his jaw, but the eyes, those had changed. They were sharper, hungrier. "I'm not the one who made this a big thing," I said. He sighed like I was inconveniencing him. "Look, you've been confused lately. You mixed up conversations. You thought I took money." "I know you took money." His jaw tightened. "So you're sticking with that?" "Yes," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I am." He shook his head and muttered, "Unbelievable," under his breath. Margaret arrived moments later in a dark blazer, holding a folder thicker than a phone book. She didn't give them more than a glance. When the bailiff opened the door and called our case, something in my chest thumped hard, a kind of reckoning. We all went in. The judge Hun, Richard Halton, a stern man with steel-gray hair, looked at each of us as we sat down. "Mr. Weller," he began, "this hearing was scheduled after concerns were raised regarding your ability to manage your finances independently. We're here to clarify whether guardianship is necessary. Do you understand?" "I do, Your Honor," I said. "And are you represented by counsel?" "Yes," I said, "Attorney Chen." Margaret stood, crisp and confident. "We also intend to present evidence of financial exploitation committed against Mr. Weller." The judge raised an eyebrow. "That's a serious allegation." Margaret nodded, "And we have serious proof." Ever see someone realize they're in real trouble? Evan's body stiffened, a tiny, involuntary twitch of panic tightening his shoulders. The judge motioned, "Proceed." Margaret started slow, methodical, precise. "Your Honor, we have documented transfers totaling $42,800 withdrawn from Mr. Weller's account over a period of 14 months. None authorized by him, all routed to accounts belonging to his grandson." Debbie turned to Evan sharply. "Evan." He whispered, "She's twisting things." Margaret continued, unfazed. "We have login timestamps showing unauthorized access from the grandson's apartment address. We have printed logs confirming the device signatures. We have sealed bank envelopes opened and re-glued." And she paused, letting the silence sit heavy. "We have audio recordings." Evan's eyes went wide. "Audio?" he hissed, leaning forward. Margaret clicked a small device on the table. "My recorder." The judge nodded. "Play it." The recording crackled to life. My voice, "You've helped before." Evan's voice, casual, "Sure, you gave me your password, remember? Told me you couldn't keep track of it." And then my soft reply, "If you say so." Followed by his relieved sigh. The courtroom felt like it dropped a few degrees. Debbie stared at her son like she'd never seen him before. "That's out of context," Evan said quickly. "He forgets stuff all the time. He mixes things up." "He does not," Rosa said suddenly. All eyes turned to her. She stood in the back, but her voice carried like she was standing at the bench. "I'm his nurse," she said, stepping forward. "He's sharp, he's consistent, he's not confused. I've seen confused he is." The judge studied her. "Your name?" "Rosa Martínez, VA clinic." "You're willing to testify to his cognitive status?" "Yes, sir, under oath." Evan's face drained of color. Debbie swallowed hard. "Evan, tell me you didn't do this." He didn't answer. He didn't dare. Margaret leaned forward, voice steady as steel. "Your Honor, we move to dismiss any guardianship considerations immediately and request referral to the County Elder Abuse Investigation Unit for criminal review." The judge looked from Evan to me, then back to Evan. "Mr. Weller appears more competent than half the litigants who come through this courtroom," he said plainly. "Guardianship petition is denied. Motion for referral is granted." Bang! The sound of the gavel echoed in my bones. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just felt something in me settle, a weight I'd been carrying for months finally easing. Evan looked at me, panicked now, not arrogant. "Grandpa, please." But I didn't respond. Because we weren't done. Not by a long shot. The courthouse hallway felt different after the ruling, brighter somehow, like someone had finally opened a window in a room I'd been suffocating in. But the moment we stepped outside courtroom 3B, the real storm broke loose. Evan came after me. Not charging, not yelling, just desperate. The kind of desperate a man gets when the walls start closing in and the lies he's been leaning on start collapsing under their own weight. "Grandpa, wait, please." His voice cracked a little. Not enough to earn my sympathy, but enough to let me know he finally understood he wasn't in control anymore. I stopped mostly because Rosa stepped between us, her hand on my arm. "You okay?" she whispered. "Yeah," I said quietly, "I'm okay." Evan looked at her like she was the enemy. Maybe she was, from his point of view. "Can I talk to you alone?" he asked me. "No," Margaret said before I could open my mouth. She moved beside me, folder tucked under her arm like a shield. "Anything you have to say, you can say here." He ran a hand over his face, pacing a short, frantic line across the tile floor. "Grandpa, look, I messed up, okay? I needed the money. I was gonna pay you back, I swear. Things just got out of hand." I stared at him, really stared. It's odd how someone you've known since the day they were born can suddenly look like a stranger wearing their skin. "You took $42,800, I said slowly. "That's not getting out of hand, that's a plan." "No," he said quickly, "it wasn't like that." Debbie rushed over, her face streaked with confusion, anger, disappointment. "Evan, did you just tell me the truth, please?" He looked at her, then at me, then at the ground. Okay, some of it I took, yes, but not all, and only because Grandpa told me." "Don't," I said sharply. He flinched. "Don't rewrite it for her, not now." His hands balled into fists at his sides. He looked at Margaret. "Do we really have to do this? Can't we just work something out?" "We are working something out," she replied, "through the proper channels." "That's not what I mean." "I know," she said, "and the answer is still no." He cursed under his breath. "You're ruining my life." I shook my head. "No, son, you did that yourself." For a second, just a sliver of a second, I saw the little boy he used to be. The one who ran through my backyard chasing fireflies with a mayonnaise jar. The one who cried when he skinned his knee and let me clean it with hydrogen peroxide, even though it stung like hell. The one who used to fall asleep on my chest watching the Tigers play on TV. Then the moment passed, replaced by a young man who had chosen greed over family. He tried one last angle, anger. "You didn't even need the money," he snapped. "You're old, Grandpa. What were you even gonna do with it?" Rosa stepped toward him, her jaw tight. "He earned it, that's what." Margaret pulled out a sheet of paper from her folder, holding it casually at her side. "This is the referral that will send your case to the Elder Abuse Task Force," she said calmly. "They'll investigate, and if the evidence holds, which it does, you'll be facing charges." He swallowed hard. "Felony charges?" "Potentially," she said, "depending on the DA's decision." The color drained out of his face. He backed up a step, then another. "Grandpa, please," his voice cracked again. "Don't let them, I'm your grandson." I felt something twist inside my chest, grief maybe, loss, not for the money but for the boy he'd once been. "I'm your grandfather," I said quietly, "and you stole from me, repeatedly, and when I confronted you, you lied to my face. You tried to make me doubt my own mind." His lip trembled. He looked at Debbie again, reaching for her hand, but she pulled away. "I don't recognize you," she whispered. "Neither did I." He blinked rapidly, fighting the collapse of his own arrogance. "So that's it, you're all just done with me." "No," I said, "the courts aren't done with you, and that's what matters now." Margaret gave me a subtle nod, time to leave. As Rosa and I walked toward the elevator, I heard Debbie quietly asking her son, "How much did you take, really?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. Downstairs, the air tasted different, colder, sharper, but cleaner somehow. Rosa squeezed my shoulder gently. "You held your own in there," she said. "I had to." "You didn't just have to," Margaret added, joining us. "You chose to, and that made all the difference." I exhaled slowly. "What happens next?" "Now," Margaret said, "we let the county do their job. A financial exploitation investigator will take the case. There will be interviews, document reviews, a full forensic audit of the account. If Evan thinks he can talk his way out of this, he's in for a rude awakening." "You think the DA will take it?" "With this kind of paper trail," she nodded confidently. "Absolutely." I didn't smile. It wasn't the moment for that. But there was something in my chest I hadn't felt in a long while. Strength. Not the physical kind. Lord knows my joints aren't what they used to be. No, this was something deeper. Dignity. Agency. The right to stand tall again. As we stepped outside into the sunlight, Rosa nudged me with a gentle grin. "You did it, Frank." I shook my head. Not yet. Because she was right in one way. The execution had begun. But what came next? That would be the unraveling. And Evan had no idea how fast everything he'd built on lies was about to collapse beneath his feet. You ever watch a building get demolished? Not the explosion itself, but the slow, careful prep work, the drilling, the weakening of support beams, the rigging of charges, knowing one push will bring the whole damn thing down. That's what the next 6 weeks felt like. Only this time, the building wasn't steel and concrete. It was Evan's lies. What happened after the hearing didn't happen all at once. It happened piece by piece, like peeling wallpaper and finding mold beneath it. The first collapse, the investigator. 2 days after court, a woman named Detective Valerie Hines from the Lucas County Elder Financial Exploitation Unit came to my house. She was in her late 40s, hair in a bun, a presence like she'd seen every type of heartbreak humans could dish out, and didn't scare easily. She sat at my kitchen table, same spot where I'd stared at those bank statements the morning everything shattered. "Mr. Weller," she said, clicking her pen, "I've reviewed the initial documents Ms. Chen sent. I need to hear the story in your own words." So I told her all of it. Every detail. Every hesitation I'd pushed down. Every manipulation Evan used. Every withdrawal he made. She wrote the whole time, not frantic scribbling but purposeful, calm strokes. The kind of writing that told me she was assembling something solid, like a wall of truth brick by brick. When I finished, she leaned back. "Your grandson's behavior is consistent with coercion and exploitation," she said plainly, "and the evidence supports that." It hit me harder than I expected, hearing it from a stranger. From an authority. Someone who wasn't tied to guilt or blood. She tapped the folder. "Mr. Weller, I'm recommending this case for prosecution." I swallowed. "So it's official now." "It is," she said. "We'll notify him soon." Soon? That word echoed in my chest. The second collapse, Debbie learns the truth. Debbie came over the next evening. No warning, just headlights pulling into the driveway as the sun dipped behind the maple trees. When she came inside, she looked smaller somehow, eyes red, hands shaking. "Dad," she whispered, "I talked to Detective Hines." I nodded. "What'd she say?" Her chin trembled. She showed me the records, all of them. I didn't want to believe it, but I can't deny numbers. I can't deny timestamps. I can't deny his voice on that recording. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at her hands. "I raised him," she said quietly. "I raised him better than this." I reached across the table and put my hand over hers. "You did," I said. "Sometimes kids make choices that have nothing to do with how they were raised." Her voice broke. "I'm so sorry I didn't believe you." I shook my head. "You believe me now." She cried then, real tears, not for the money, but for the realization that her son had become a person she didn't recognize. She hugged me before she left, a long hug, one we both needed. It didn't fix everything, but it healed something. Something cracked by doubt. The third collapse, Evan gets the knock. It happened on a Monday morning, May 9th, 2022, at 8:52 a.m. I remember the exact time because my phone buzzed with a voicemail from Debbie, her voice shaky. "Dad, they're at Evan's apartment." I sat at the kitchen table, hands clasped, heart pounding as if the officers were coming to my door instead. I wasn't celebrating. It didn't feel like victory. It felt heavy. Like the moment a truth becomes real. Later that afternoon, Debbie called again. "They seized his laptop," she said, "and his phone. They said the financial forensic team needs to review everything." "Is he arrested?" I asked. "Not yet," she said. "It's an investigation, but he's scared, really scared." I didn't answer right away. Because here's the truth of it. I didn't want him behind bars. I didn't want his life ruined. I didn't want punishment. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted accountability. I wanted him to understand what he took, not just money but trust, dignity, family. But he'd made his choices. And choices have consequences. The fourth collapse, his story falls apart. A week later, the investigator called me. "Mr. Weller," she said, "we spoke to your grandson today." My heart thudded, and he denied everything, claimed you gave him access, claimed you're confused, claimed the money was gifts he never documented. I exhaled heavily. Of course he did. "But here's the thing," she added. "We confronted him with the IP logs, the timestamps, the messages, your audio recording, and the bank officer's notes. He tried to shift the story, but every version contradicted the last." Meaning his credibility is shot. His lies don't line up with the evidence, and the DA is moving forward. I closed my eyes, letting the weight settle in. "What's the charge?" I asked. "Felony theft from a vulnerable adult," she said, "and depending on the total amount and duration, possibly more." I felt Rose's words echo in my mind. He's capable of more than you want to believe. The fifth collapse, his final attempt. He came to my house. Of course he did. It was late, close to 9 p.m., and I was in the living room watching the Tigers game rerun when I heard the knock. Soft, hesitant, not the familiar rhythm he used his whole life. I opened the door. Evan stood there, hood up, eyes red, not from crying but from panic. "Grandpa," he said, voice cracking, "please, please help me." I didn't move. "You shouldn't be here." "Please," he repeated, like the word could magically undo months of choices. "They're saying I could go to jail. They're saying I stole, that I took advantage. Grandpa, I didn't mean." "Stop," I said quietly. He swallowed hard. "I'm your grandson." "You were," I said, "but the man standing here, I don't know him." His breath hitched. "I'll pay it back, all of it, I swear. I just need more time." "You didn't ask for time before you took it." He looked down, shoulders slumping. "I was scared," he whispered. I needed money. I thought you wouldn't notice. I thought you didn't need it anymore." That line, "you didn't need it anymore," felt like a blade. "That money was my life's work," I said softly. "It was your grandmother's too." He winced. "Grandpa, please tell them not to press charges. Tell them you forgive me." I stared at him, feeling the old ache of love mixing with fresh wounds. "I do forgive you," I said. And his eyes flicked up with a spark of hope. "But forgiveness," I continued, "doesn't erase consequences." The spark died. "I can't stop the DA," I said. "Not now. You started something you can't back out of." Tears filled his eyes, but he blinked them away angrily. "You're choosing them over me." "No," I said, "I'm choosing the truth." He stood there a long moment, chest heaving, hands clenched, jaw tight. Then he turned away and walked back down the steps into the dark. I didn't call after him. I didn't shut the door quickly either. I stood there until his footsteps faded completely. Because that was the moment, right there on my porch in the cool night air, I realized something painful and undeniable. The consequences weren't just falling on him. They were falling on all of us. And yet it had to happen. The unraveling was nearly complete. What came next would be the resolution. The final reckoning. And I wasn't sure if it would bring peace or just the truth we'd all been avoiding. I didn't go to the sentencing. Debbie asked if I wanted to twice, gently, but I told her no. I'd already watched enough of this story unfold in conference rooms, courtrooms, and my own damn kitchen. I didn't need to see my grandson standing there in a county courtroom, wearing a borrowed tie, waiting for a judge to decide how many years of his life he'd lose. I'd lived through enough losses already. But I did read the report when it came in the mail. June 28, 2022, a date that felt both forgettable and permanent at the same time. The DA had offered a deal. Restitution, 5 years probation, mandatory financial ethics counseling, and 200 hours of community service. Had he refused the deal, he'd have been staring down a real prison term. The evidence was that solid. He took it. He had to. The restitution part, well, that came out to the full $42,800, paid back in structured installments under court supervision. I'll be dead before the last payment clears, most likely. Funny thing is, I came to realize that the money mattered least to me in the end. What I cared about was the acknowledgement. A legal system stating, in ink and record, that I wasn't confused. That I was losing it. That I wasn't the senile old man he claimed I was. I cared about getting my name back. About a week after the sentencing, I got a knock on the door. I knew it was him before I even turned the knob. Evan stood on the porch wearing a plain white t-shirt, jeans, and a look I'd never seen on him before. Not arrogance, not panic, not the slick confidence of a kid who thought he could get away with anything. Just shame. "Grandpa," he said quietly. I leaned against the doorway. "Evan." He cleared his throat. "I'm supposed to apologize." He stopped, wiped at his nose with the back of his hand. But I wanted to say it even if they hadn't told me to. I didn't answer. "I thought I could handle things," he said. "I thought I was in control. I thought I was smarter than everyone else, but I was desperate and stupid and selfish." His voice shook. "And I hurt you, worse than I ever meant to. I know I did, and I can't fix that part." He swallowed hard. "But I can pay you back, and I can stay out of trouble, and I can stop lying to myself about who I am." I let his words hang in the air between us. They were true. But truth doesn't always heal. Sometimes it just settles like dust after a long fight. "You took more than money from me," I finally said. "I know," he whispered. "You made me doubt myself." A tear slid down his face. "I'm sorry." "You made your mother doubt me." He winced. "I'm sorry for that too." "And you took advantage of love," I added. "That's the worst thing a man can take." He nodded, slow, painful. "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it back, if you'll let me." I didn't answer right away. Because forgiveness is slow. And trust is slower. But I didn't close the door on him either. Probation's 5 years, I said. Let's start with that. He nodded again, wiping his eyes. Okay, he whispered, okay. He stepped back from the porch, hands in his pockets like he used to when he was a kid leaving after Sunday dinner. Only now he was older, heavier with consequences, the weight of his actions finally pulling him toward something resembling adulthood. As he walked toward his car, I called after him, Evan. He turned. You get one chance, I said, just one. He gave a small, broken smile. I won't waste it. Then he drove off. After he left, I stepped out onto the porch. The summer sun was warm on my face. The maple leaves rustled overhead. Somewhere down the street, a lawnmower buzzed to life. Ordinary sounds, safe sounds. I sat down in Helen's old rocking chair, the one with the faded cushion and the uneven leg, and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 6 months. Did I feel triumphant? No. Revenge isn't fireworks and victory laps. Not at my age. It's quieter, more solemn. It's getting your name back. It's standing tall again. It's knowing you weren't crazy after all. And it's reclaiming something that was almost taken from you, your dignity. I didn't feel joy, but I did feel peace. A small, steady kind that sits deep in your bones. I watched the road long after Evan's car disappeared. Not waiting for him to return. Not waiting for anything, really. Just breathing. Just existing. Just being myself again. I'd taken back every dollar. But more importantly, I'd taken back me. And that was worth more than $42,800 will ever be.